Hi there, it's Amy from Cakes with Faces and welcome back to my series about my wish list of places I'd like to go in Japan. And today is all about Yamagata, which is north of Tokyo in Tohoku. Now I've been to this area very briefly when I stayed in Sendai, but there's loads more things I'd like to do there and I would love to go back. I hope this series gives you some ideas for places to go around Japan that you might not have considered. It feels like we're always hearing about things to do in Tokyo, Kyoto and Osaka, so that's where everyone goes and they get really busy with tourists. But if you go somewhere else, you can have a much calmer experience where you're not always fighting against the crowds, and there's so many interesting places all around Japan that we just don't hear that much about. There's new Japan videos every other Thursday if you want to subscribe. And if you're dreaming of a trip to Japan one day, my travel guidebook has loads of ideas for things to do, help with booking everything, and lots of practical tips about how to get around Japan. You can get it from cakeswithfaces.co.uk. So some of these places around Yamagata are quite well known and some of them are a bit less well known. And I'm going to mention a few places you can go around this general area of Japan. I'd be tempted to stay in Sendai as a base and then go on trips out to other places. More about that in a minute. And remember that Sendai is only an hour and 45 minutes away from Tokyo on the bullet train. I've done that trip and it feels really quick and easy to do. Yamagata takes a bit longer because the bullet train there isn't as fast as the Tohoku Shinkansen. That one takes 2.5 hours. Either way, you could easily stay for a few days in Tokyo and then move up north to Sendai or Yamagata for a few days for a bit more variety and to see more of Japan. So first, I'm going to start off with the main place that I most want to go to, which is Yamadera, which is a temple in the mountains. It looks like a lovely place with a stunning view from the top. And it's not just a temple, it's a combined temple and hike day out. The start of the hike is only 5 minutes from Yamadera station, which is an hour from Sendai station or 20 minutes from Yamagata city station. And it's not a completely remote area. There's several shops and restaurants there, so you can get some snacks to fuel up before the hike or have a meal when you're done. The hike up the mountain is along a stone path with steps. There's over 1,000 steps, and along the way there's various temple buildings, statues and stone lanterns to look at, so you can stop off and look at things, take some pictures if you need a break from the stairs. Apparently there's not many views of the scenery as you go up through the forest, but then when you get to the top, the view just opens up and you can see the whole valley and mountains around you. So there's no spoilers on the way up, and then when you get to the top, it's stunning. Next is Mount Zao, which is on the edge of Yamagata prefecture between Sendai and Yamagata. It takes 40 minutes to get there on the bus from Yamagata city, and it's known for snow monsters. In the winter, the snow covers the trees on the mountain and the snow sticks to them and turns them into figures that look like monsters. This is a special thing that only happens in a few places in Japan. There's a ropeway you can take from the onsen village going up above the snow monsters so you can see them all from above. And at certain times of the year, they're lit up at night, which must be really atmospheric. The snow monsters are there from the end of January to mid-March, and the best time is mid-February. There's also a festival where lots of people ski down the mountain between the snow monsters holding torches, and there's fireworks. You can also go skiing at Mount Zao. It's a whole ski resort with lots of different lifts and courses. That's open from mid-December to early May. If you're there at a different time of the year when it's not snowy, you can still use the cable cars to go up the mountain and go hiking. As well as being a ski resort, it's also an onsen resort. Mount Zao is an active volcano, so the volcanic activity under the ground heats up the water and creates hot springs. There's lots of different baths you can visit. It seems like skiing and onsen would be a pretty good combination to warm up after a cold day on the mountain. And there is one that's tattoo friendly as well. Zao Onsen Dai Rotenburo is a large outdoor onsen in the forest. It looks lovely. The water looks really clear turquoise blue. I hope it's really like that. I hope they haven't photoshopped it too much. It does look a bit like they've turned up the saturation. And finally for Mount Zao, up the mountain there's a crater with a lake called the Okama crater. Okama means cooking pot because that's what it's supposed to look like. You can't go right up to it, but you can go hiking and see it from a distance, and it changes colour in different lights at different times of day. You can hike to the crater lake in 45 minutes from the top of the Mount Zao ropeway. From there, you can also walk to another peak of Mount Zao, so you can do a whole hiking course if you want to. Yamagata is also known for cherries. It produces 70% of Japan's cherries. There's lots of places where you can go and pick your own and have all the cherries you can eat for an hour or half an hour. There's also a cherry festival, and as always with these regional specialities, there's lots of local specialty products with cherry flavour like cherry ice cream. Another local speciality is Yonezawa beef, which is a type of Wagyu beef, kind of similar to Kobe beef but less famous. And I'm thinking, if there's cherries, there must also be cherry blossoms. Cherry blossom season here is a little bit later than in Tokyo because it's slightly further north, so it's a bit cooler. It's in mid to late April. So if you miss the cherry blossoms in Tokyo, you can always travel a little bit north to catch them as the wave travels up across Japan. They always publish these cherry blossom forecasts to tell you when they'll be in full bloom in each area because they don't last long. A good way to see them might be on Yamagata Railway's Flower Nagai line, which is a railway line that's been running for over 100 years. It's just southwest of Yamagata City, and it goes past lots of popular flower viewing spots. As well as the sakura, there's various other types of flowers at different times of year, and it also goes past some onsen towns and a sake brewery. There's this map on their website in English that tells you all the interesting places it goes past. And very importantly, the Flower Nagai line has these very cute mascot characters. I like these bunnies. There's Mochi, the station master, and their team, and this turtle just works there part-time. And there's this young lady who's the station's service team. It says that she likes jazz music and used to be in the brass band club at school. It seems like there is, or maybe was, an actual rabbit station master, a bit like that cat station master in Wakayama. It says, starting in December 2021, the station master will be closed for a long time, resumption undecided. I'm not sure what that means. I hope it's not bad news for Mochi. Next is a place you often see pictures of, Ginzan Onsen. It's northeast of Yamagata City. Ginzan means silver mountain, Ginzan, silver mountain, because there used to be a silver mine here. Now it's just an onsen town. There's all these historic, picturesque buildings around a river. You often see pictures of it in the snow because it looks so beautiful. You can get a day pass for the onsen, or you can stay overnight. I think really you've got to stay overnight to see it all lit up in the evening. Near the town there's a waterfall that you can walk to, and you can also go into the entrance of one of the old silver mine tunnels. It might look like this area is quite remote on the map, but it's only a 35-minute bus ride from Oishida Station, which is on the Shinkansen line to Tokyo. The next few things are a bit further north of Yamagata City. First, we've got the Mogami River Cruise, which is a sightseeing boat trip through the scenery. It looks like it's quite relaxing, but the Mogami River is one of Japan's top 3 rapid rivers, so you might be swept along by the current. It looks like a nice trip to go on in summer and in winter. In the winter they put kotatsu on the boat, which are tables with blankets and heaters underneath to keep you cosy. You go through a gorge with forests and waterfalls. Yamagata is the prefecture with the most waterfalls in all of Japan. It's got 10% of all the waterfalls, and you can see 3 of them on this trip. I always do love a waterfall. One of them is called Shiri-taki waterfalls. Taki means waterfall and shiri means bottom, because that's supposed to be the shape of the rock that the water's coming out of. Now, I'm sorry to say I couldn't find a picture of it. All the pictures are of this one, the Shiraito Falls, which is more famous. So I'm going to have to leave that one to your imagination. Also in this general area, there's a Wasabi Farm you can visit. It's in Okura village, which is north of Yamagata. You book a guided tour where you can have a go at harvesting the wasabi, you learn how to prepare it, and of course there's a tasting session. You can also book a special meal made with the local wasabi. It sounds pretty good to me. It doesn't look quite as picturesque as the one I was going to visit near Matsumoto, but if you're in the area and there's a chance to visit a wasabi farm, I think you've got to do it. There's a half-hour bus there from Shinjo Station, which looks quite close to Yamagata on the map, but the train between them actually takes an hour and a half. So if you want to go to some of these places, you might want to change where you're staying for a night or two, just so the journeys aren't quite so long. It's also worth remembering that buses and trains aren't as frequent in some of these countryside areas, so it might need a bit more planning. I always prefer to get public transport because the train system in Japan is so good, and I prefer to not drive if I don't have to, but it does seem like this is one of those areas where hiring a car might make some things easier if that's what you want to do. So if you're in Okura village for the Wasabi Farm, there's also a soba making experience where you can have a go at making your own soba noodles, which are the local speciality. And then afterwards, you can eat them with pickles. It looks really good. Sometimes it seems like you can only do these sorts of things if you're on an organised tour of Japan. But this one, you can just book yourself on Expedia. It looks really easy. And it says they have multiple languages. It's only £27 each, and that includes your lunch, although you do have to make it yourself. On this map of Okura village, they've got several viewpoints marked, so it must be quite a picturesque place. It's also near some terraced rice fields called Shikamura Rice Terrace, which would be really great to see. And here's an unusual ryokan I came across near Okura village. It has an onsen hot spring bath in a cave. You have to go through this dark tunnel to get to it. It looks a bit spooky and cold, especially if you're on the way to the bath, but it's definitely something different. Next is Mount Haguro. Now this is kind of in another area again, going off towards the west. And it's a place where people used to go on pilgrimages. It's only 1 hour to get to the summit along paths, which sounds not too bad, although there are about 2,500 steps, so you probably would feel that in your legs. Along the way, you go through the forest and past some shrines. The most famous part is this wooden pagoda, which is really ornate with all these wooden decorations. I think the best part would be walking through these giant cedar trees. They're hundreds of years old. Just look at how tall they are. It would be so peaceful. And of course, a lot of these places aren't as well known to foreign tourists, so they're not as likely to be as crowded as all the places in the lists of top 10 things to do in Japan. Loads more tourists go towards Osaka and Kyoto, and not as many go north towards Tohoku. Next, on to where to stay. Now at first I thought Sendai would be a good place to stay in this region. I've stayed there very briefly and I really like the city. It had a really good feel to it. When I stayed there, I went out to Matsushima on the coast, which is such a beautiful place. The videos are on my channel. But now I'm thinking Sendai would be a good base for some of these places, but Yamagata City might be more convenient, especially if you're going around on the train. Or you could stay there for a couple of nights and then move on to somewhere else, because all these places are quite spread out. I don't recommend changing hotels too much because it does waste time and it is annoying dragging your suitcases around on the train. But maybe I'd stay in the city for a couple of nights and then move on to somewhere else in the countryside. You can find and book all these hotels really easily on hotel booking sites like Expedia. It's just the same as booking hotels anywhere. And finally, a bit about train passes. If you're spending some of your trip in Tokyo and then the rest of your trip in this area, you don't need a JR pass for the whole of Japan. You can get a regional pass instead, which will save you a bit of money. Details of all these regional passes and how to get around Japan on the train are all in my guidebook. For Yamagata, I would get the JR East Tohoku Area Pass, which is £127, compared to £210 for the JR Pass for the whole of Japan. It covers the whole Tohoku area, including the bullet train, as many trips as you want for 5 days. You could even go further north and go somewhere else as well. In contrast to the regular local trains, with the bullet train you can go quite long distances and it's often much quicker than you think. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about Yamagata and what there is to do there. You can see places like Yamadera, that temple in the mountains, the snow monsters, and lots of amazing places in the countryside. If you've been, please do share your recommendations in the comments. And if you want to see my videos about the other places on my Japan wishlist, they're all together in a playlist on my channel. And I'll see you not next week, but the week after on Thursday. Bye bye.